Tonight, we're talking to Jen Lee. Jen is a tattooer at Ed Hardy's Tattoo City in San Francisco. I'm your host, Ann Kelly. Thanks for joining us tonight, Jen.
Thanks for having me.
And where are you joining us from tonight?
I'm in the Bay Area. I live in the East Bay, right outside of San Francisco, in an undisclosed location. I'm just kidding. But welcome to my living room.
I like the colors.
I'm a big fan of pink.
When I was a teenager, I thought we weren't supposed to like pink or something.
Right. Yeah, I was way too tough when I was a teenager. But pink has been a color that's gone it's gone through phases for me. But I'd say like I've liked it all the way through. But it's definitely it's had its high moments. It's the last couple of years. It's been having I think it's kind of just been kind of popular in general the last handful of years, but I'm embracing it. I mean, I just got married in a hot pink, like 1970s wedding dress, so
which is very cool.
Or I made it a wedding dress. It wasn't a wedding dress, but yeah.
So are you from the Bay Area originally, or?
I've lived here more years than anywhere else in my lifetime, but I originally from the East Coast, but we moved to Southern California when I was a little kid, like 6 years old, and I grew up in Southern California, and then moved up here when I was 18. So, and then I moved around a little bit from here, but came back, and I've mostly been here my adult life. So, spent some years on the East Coast. Like I lived in New York for a little while, and my family is all from Pennsylvania, and I've visited there quite a bit. And I have friends in Rhode Island and Boston, and so I've spent a lot of time out there. But I'm definitely Californian. I'm like Bay Area Californian, pretty through and through.
I've never lived in California, but I've visited there frequently over the years, and particularly San Francisco. I think I've been there every March for about 10 years or so. So it's felt, I don't know, it has a special place.
Do you come out here for a specific reason every March?
Usually I would come out every March for this event at the San Francisco Art Institute.
Yeah, I was supposed to be in Paris in March. I do a convention over there every March. And as I was like just looking at the numbers in Europe, like watching those numbers and watching, I was like, there's no way this is going to happen, And obviously at the time had no idea how catastrophic this whole thing was going to be. But yeah, so I ended up canceling my trip, but then the convention was canceled, and every convention this year has been canceled. And yeah, so, I mean, obviously, but it's kind of been okay. I mean, obviously not for the world or the state of things or whatever, but for myself personally, my own, little bubble, kind of slowing down a little bit has been okay for me. As much as I really love traveling, and I'm really actually starting to miss it and starting to miss my friends that I see when I get to, go to all these places. I know a lot of people were kind of happy to step off the treadmill for a year and just kind of catch their breath a little. There is this culture of like crushing it. I'm working every day. I'm painting, and then I'm tattooing, and I just did this. And it's like you've, and especially since Instagram, there's always this pressure to like produce, and I think that people, even during quarantine, were feeling that pressure and becoming really depressed because of it. Was like, I feel like I'm supposed to be productive now still. And there are all these things of like, group challenges. And I was like, oh my God, I'm just going to paint my kitchen cabinets, you guys. Like, can we stop crushing it for a minute and just get some other shit done?
Oh, really?
The shop was closed. Like, no one was allowed to work in San Francisco tattooing it was almost 7 months. It was 6.5 months. So I ended up, I did do a lot of painting, proud of what I did do. And honestly, I was a little bit sad when it was over because I felt like I was really just hitting a stride with like a series of stuff that I wanted to keep exploring. And once I start tattooing again, like that's really where all of my creative energy goes. And so it's hard to keep painting and tattooing at the same time.
Between tattooing and being an artist, what was the order of those things? How did that kind of come to be?
I definitely was a really creative kid growing up, and I felt like I was a little too comfortable calling myself an artist when I was growing up. Just I feel like now it's like being an artist is like a term that I have wrestled with, because I feel like it sounds pretentious in a lot of ways, or there are so many like labels that get attached to it as far as being like flighty or, you know,
Right.
um, whatever. But yeah, definitely as a kid, like I was super creative. My mom was really creative, and is still really creative. Um, and and early on again too, I was kind of an awkward kid. I didn't really fit in. Um, and but that was like where I found a lot of my self-worth. That's where I got a lot of praise and encouragement, and people, it was like the thing that I did that people couldn't do, that they thought was cool or whatever. And um so yeah, I always just was like, oh, I'm gonna be an artist, like there was no other thing I could think of to do. And then I went to art school, ended up being an art school dropout.
Where did you go to art school?
I went to, it was at the time, it was called California College of Arts and Crafts. It was named after the arts and crafts movement. Apparently, a lot of people had a hard time with that name, and then they ended up changing it to California College of the Arts, which is what it's called now, which I hate. I think is completely generic and says nothing. And I loved the fact that originally it was started from this movement that I felt was so important, and I wish could have carried on, and I wish was more a part of our culture these days. That's where I started and didn't finish. But I started out in illustration because I was like, well, I'm going to be an artist, but I need to do something practical because, I need to make a living at this. I had no um, delusions thinking that I was going to make a living being a painter. Even then, and this was in 94 or something, I could even see that, like, okay, I'm probably not going to be able to make a living just being an illustrator. Like everything was very much moving just toward graphic design. And I didn't want to sit at a computer all day. And then I fell in love with printmaking and did that for a while. Still love printmaking. Actually have a little press, but it's in storage. But nothing was really landing as far as like how to make a living as an artist, and I'd gotten tattooed and I was getting tattooed, and then it just kind of clicked one day where I was like, okay, I really like this environment. Like this suits me. It's a craft, there's a lot of components to it. It's very disciplined. It's similar to printmaking in the sense that like you have these tools that really haven't evolved that much in the last 100 or so years. It's just something that was very raw and honest and had this amazing history, and I knew that. And then as I got into it, like realized just how much that was the case. And so I found very luckily found someone to teach me. Kind of started working as a tattooer when I was 20, and dropped out of school and never looked back. But I've always painted, whenever I have the time to. So
So, in terms of just getting into tattooing, I've heard that's kind of hard to do.
I think that that's been a really interesting evolution since I started. I started in 95, and there was essentially no internet. There were no websites. There was no eBay or places that you could just order whatever watch a YouTube video and learn how, there was none of that. The only way you could get in was really just pounding the pavement and going to shops and being annoying and showing them your work and getting tattooed. And I have to be honest, I didn't really have an official apprenticeship. A friend of mine had a friend who had been tattooing a few years, and he showed me some stuff, out of my house, and showed me right, though, I have to say, for the situation, like taught me about sterile chain of events and cross contamination and how to keep myself clean and how to keep people safe. And that was like lesson number one. Lesson number two was making my own needles, because you couldn't buy needles from a supply company 25 years ago. So you had to take all the individual needles and solder them together in the groupings yourself, and then attach them to the needle bar. And then, so that was a whole craft in itself. And I'm really, really, really thankful I don't have to do that anymore. Insanely time consuming. From there, I got a job at a place that was super scrappy. Probably shouldn't have been a tattoo shop, whatever. But through that, I met somebody who I'm still friends with. And she got me a job at like a really reputable place, and kind of just worked my way up from there. So I never really had like one real apprenticeship. I do feel like I had throughout my career, and even today I feel like there's been so many people who have really taken me under their wing and and taught me things. There's a good solid handful of different people that have been really influential. And I got really fortunate, especially like learning in the Bay Area when I did as well. Things have become a lot more homogenized, and, think through like internet, and then especially in the last 10 years with social media. But at the time, San Francisco was a really amazing little bubble, like it was really a tattoo mecca. And I got to learn here, which was, really incredible and just a stroke of luck. Ed had like the first custom studio, all custom work in the country, and he really was a champion of that. He went and studied in Japan when like no white people were going over there, and like learning to tattoo in Japan, like that's insane. 60s, 70s, building those relationships, but like learning from those guys, because they were already doing these like just amazing, like, head to toe bodysuits, and Western imagery was these like little 1 point tattoos, which I think both are fantastic. But the United States really hadn't seen that at that time. He was huge in bringing that here. And really like his influence with Sailor Jerry, who that's a household name now.
He was in Hawaii.
Yeah. So he was going to Hawaii, and Sailor Jerry was a mentor to Ed at one point, and Sailor Jerry was starting to do like incorporate Japanese work and whole body pieces into the traditional Western style, and then Ed just kind of took it further from there.
Well, and then for those who aren't familiar with custom tattooing, I mean, for the most part, people would just kind of have the option to walk in and pick out some flash, right?
Right.
And people still do. There's tons of great and historic flash hanging in Tattoo City right now. So
yeah. So it's a really good mix of that. And I would say, I would say modern flash is more people bringing in stuff on their phones.
Exactly.
Which is kind of a bummer. There's this weird irony of people being like, oh, I don't want what everybody else has, or I don't want to just pick something off the walls, but then they just pick something that they saw on Google, and I'm like, that's way more generic than like getting some antique stuff off our walls. But I love flash. I love the idea of flash. First real job that I worked at was a place called Picture Machine in San Francisco. And at the time, it was the oldest, like as far as like same location, oldest shop in the city. It's moved since then, but it was started by Guy Martinick, who, his nickname was Picture Machine. And he just like the flash, like he just was known for like the flash on those walls, and people would get that flash. And like, I was really, really influenced by that. And I love that. Like, I love painting flash. Like, I love finding designs, like going through thousands of vintage postcards and like a ton of like old magazines from the 20s and tear sheets from the 50s and catalogs of, pulp magazine covers and all of this stuff. And I love going to all of that imagery to like figure out what can become a tattoo. And that's what all those old guys did. That's what all, from the early 1900s, like throughout, until Google came along, that's what we all did, was just scoured, trying to find images that we could turn into tattoos. And I still love it. So I wish people would get more flash. It's really fun.
Custom tattooing, that's this new evolution and really cool thing. But I feel like to go get some, for example, Sailor Jerry flash would be really cool, going back to the history of the medium.
It's weird. I started tattooing at a time when there was a really good mix of both, because like right around the time that I started tattooing, Ed had done this, he had curated a show at the DeYoung Museum, or no, the Yerba Buena Center for the Arts, called Pierced Hearts and True Love. And it was a century of drawing for tattoos. And I feel like that really reintroduced a lot of flash back into the mix. And there was the catalog for that show, the Pierced Hearts and True Love book, had a couple of sheets in that I just really gravitated toward and was really foundational for me as far as my style. But around that same time, he also put out the first Sailor Jerry flash book. And I think that came out the year that I started tattooing. It was the first one, the blue one. And that was like really hugely influential. That coupled with, starting at Picture Machine. So flash has always been like a really big part of my upbringing in tattooing. And then even when I worked in New York, I worked at a shop that was like people just pick stuff off the walls every time. Like that was what they wanted. And they wanted it like it was on the wall. They did not want your creative input. They picked a rose from the wall. They wanted that rose. They picked some tribal from the wall. They wanted it just as is. You know, I'd be like, let me fix it up for you. And they're like, no, 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 no. Like put that leaf back how it was, even if it was super wonky, you know. I've always done a mix of custom and flash. And so that's just, I feel like that's like what runs through my veins, really. Although mostly what I do these days is custom, which is great. It's fun. And I thankfully I'm at a place where people are familiar enough with my style. And part of that is because of social media. I feel like as much as I can get frustrated or like a little exasperated by it at times. It is a really great tool for like steering the ship and being able to get to do what you want. You know, if you have an idea, you throw some paintings out there and eventually you'll get to tattoo it. Much as I do mostly custom stuff these days, people come to me for what I do. So it's still really fun. And I'm in a position where if somebody comes to me for something custom and it's really like if I can do a good job, I'll take it on, even if it's not quote unquote my style. But sometimes people will come to me and I'm like, you know, my coworker will do a way better job of that. Like that's what he does. That's not what I do. So that's really nice too, being in that kind of environment. I've always been very comfortable if somebody comes to me for something that I know that like I know someone who can do this better and will enjoy it, and you should go see this person. It's nice being in that position. So I have my roots in like Americana, traditional, old vintage style. I feel like I do it with a little bit of a lighter hand, really a spectrum of how that stuff can be done, and I'm on the more delicate side of it. It has a little bit of a feminine edge. Doesn't have to. It's got a solid line. Everything I do has a solid line and black shading, but I'm not, as some people might say, like ham-fisted with it as far as like a super heavy line and tons of black shading and traditional, but a little on the finer side.
And how did you find yourself working for Ed Hardy?
I did a guest spot. I was living in Denver at the time and came out for a couple of weeks to cover somebody who was going out of town. And yeah, just got along well with the crew. I was looking to move back and I was like, you know, if I could work at Tattoo City, like I would definitely move back, you know, but I kind of put a feeler out there and didn't expect much to come from it, but was like definitely had the idea of like, you know, I think I might like the Bay Area. Just felt like home and was wanting to come back, but I needed a reason. I put the feeler out and like a week or so later I got a phone call from Ed asking me if I wanted to come out. So I had to sell my house, so I was like, I need to sell my house real quick and I'll be right out. So yeah, kind of went back and forth until I was able to like get out there full time. But yeah, so I was about 12 years in when that happened. But yeah, it was huge.
So I'm gonna pop up your Instagram.
My work is definitely like has a feminine lean to it, but it's not like cutesy or girly. Very easily can translate whatever you know, a guy wants and not have it look feminine.
Like this one. This one. Wow.
Yeah,
I love this.
Thanks. Yeah, and that's you just want the Nautilus and 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea tattoo. So but yeah, he just kind of let me run with it. And stuff like this is really fun because, you know, I was able to like go back and watch clips from the movie and piece some stuff together, like different ideas together, and do a little homework. I feel like tattooing is really kind of an amazing world education, you know, so many different subject matters. You know, people bring you an idea, but then like I go home and I do, unless they have specifics that they bring to me, generally I go home and I research all this stuff and I do all the homework, and I want it to be right, and I want it to, if somebody wants something on them forever, like it matters enough that I get it right. And even sometimes people don't know, like they're like, oh, whatever, you know, and I'm like, no, this matters, like not whatever, like I'm going to go do some digging and make sure that we do this right. But yeah, so that was a really fun piece, and definitely a little out of my wheelhouse, but I'm always happy to take on those challenges. Like I said, especially if I feel like I can do it well, you know, if it's a style that, yeah, I can take most anything and do it my style. So
Well, and just the detail you've added here. How amazing is that? I mean, that's
Thanks.
that could be almost a tattoo within a tattoo within a tattoo. I mean,
Thanks.
yeah.
Yeah, I love doing stuff like that. I find that, it's fun for sure. Like that's the challenge is to make it special somehow, where someone can look at it from across the room and be like, "Oh, that's awesome." And then they get up close and they're like, "Oh my God, look at that little thing," and that's I find a lot of joy in that. So,
No, I love that. This is so cool.
oh,
It's
thanks.
watercolor and
Yeah, ink and watercolor and then a little bit of gouache here and there.
there's the full piece.
Yeah.
So that is great.
Thank you. Thanks. Yeah, I had a lot of fun with, like I said, I got to start experimenting, which, even when I'm tattooing, sometimes, I get invited to participate in either, books or group projects or shows or whatever. And whenever the time comes, just have to do something that I know I can do well. And I don't really have a lot of time to experiment. And that's one of the things that was really great about quarantine was that I did have time. That it was like, well, if this doesn't work, there's no pressure. I can throw stuff away and start over. And even with that, it was hard to like really let myself loosen up and experiment. But yeah, I did kind of start this little series that was pretty heavily influenced by a lot of pulp art that I was looking at the time. And I was watching a ton of like schlock films, like 1960s sci-fi stuff. And not that you can see that in this, but yeah, definitely made me start kind of looking at more mid-century pulp and those illustrators and stuff, and kind of just trying to like study some of their styles and techniques and what they were doing. The line work in this whole series is a blotted line technique that I used, which part of the fun of that is like there's not a lot of control. Every line is kind of a happy little accident. So that was really fun because as a tattooer, like having really clean, crisp line work is so important. And whenever I do paintings, they usually are for things that are tattoo related, and they usually have that really clean line on them. And so this was fun, like mixing that up a little bit and kind of just enjoying that experimental process again was really fun. So
And so back pre-COVID, you did a fair amount of conventions and
yeah,
such. And some of those were international, right?
yeah, yeah, pretty most of yeah, all of them really, most of them.
Do you have a favorite one, any reason or
I have a couple for different reasons. There's one in Aachen, which is a really little city in northern Germany, and I really love that convention just because it's kind of a convention it's like a tattooers convention. Like we really get taken care of. It's really small. It's the people are really wonderful. The person who puts it on, Andreas Cohen, he's really great. And it's really easy to get to. The trains in Europe are amazing. So it's a 3 hour straight shot from Paris. It's 3 hours from Amsterdam. But yeah, so that convention, as conventions go, is one of my favorites for sure. And I also was doing the Paris convention every year, which is totally the opposite. And I love that convention for all the opposite reasons of it's just big and crazy and tons of people. And then it's in Paris, which is incredible. It's my favorite city. And also the person who puts that convention on is great as well. Tintin puts that convention on. And so I'm so thankful that I've been invited to be able to do either of those. I've done the London convention a good handful of times, and I love that convention. It's great. I'd rather spend time in Paris, honestly, when it comes down to it. And then I've done the Barcelona convention as well, and I love Barcelona. So yeah, I love being able to travel and be able to go visit all of these places through tattooing. Like I would never be able to do it otherwise. And the fact that I get to do it so regularly, and I've made so many amazing friends over there and had all of these experiences for a long time. And this is funny, this is one of these things where tattooers often will like they'll roll in and they'll do the convention and they go home, whereas like I'll take a couple weeks. So when I do a convention, I always try to go someplace I've never been, and then I do the convention. And so that's been really amazing as well, and really influential, just as far as like I have found so much reference and inspiration that has definitely made its way into my work. So been beneficial all around for sure. Bottom right is the poster for the Aachen convention.
Ah,
Uh,
perfect.
I didn't do that poster. You know, a different tattooer will like do the official poster for the convention, and so yeah, I did not do that poster, but it's a really good one.
So how long have conventions been going on?
Since before I've been tattooing. I mean, they've exploded though. Like there's so many of them, and I'm really choosy about the ones that I'll do. Like I only do conventions that are like put on by tattooers or people who are really like in the community. There are a lot of people who just it's just they put on swap meets at this point, you know, like tattoo swap meets, and like anyone who's got money for a booth is welcome, and like it's just a bunch of shitty merch and
Mhm.
subpar tattooers and you know whatever, and it sucks because like the general public doesn't know the difference. But I am really choosy about like which conventions I will do, and the two that I mentioned that I do regularly in Europe are definitely up there. It's always a really good crowd, really great tattooers. Yeah, I mean, not to sound too snobbish, it's not about like only
Well, no.
wanting to like rub shoulders with more elite people. It's just more about like I don't want to do the one that's just being, you know, it's just like an expo. It's just exploitive, you know. It's has nothing to do with the love of what we do. So
Well, and I almost kind of compare that to just with art shows you can apply to as an artist. They've just exploded as well. And as an artist, if you just apply to every art show that you see, you're probably going to go broke just doing that. And a
yeah,
lot of them, maybe not to say it's the same thing with tattoo conventions, but maybe a lot of them just are trying to make a profit. So it's kind of honing in on which ones are kind of maybe their intentions match yours more than
right.
anything.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally.
You have chihuahuas, right?
Ooh, yeah, they're mixed, little mixed breeds. But yeah, that center picture there, that's my Archie. Um, he is he was a little they're both little rescue dogs, but he was a little orphan. A friend of mine bottle fed him, and then I ended up fostering him and his three brothers, and he just had the winning personality. So I kept him. But he's, you know, he's a mix. He's Chihuahua and a handful of other small things. He likes to be in the pilot's chair. Yeah, he it's funny because I have a like a little guest bed in my office where I draw, and he usually just sleeps there. Him and his our other dog. I say his sister. They're not actually brother and sister, but they both sleep in there while I'm drawing. But every once in a while, he just needs to be in my lap. So it's sweet. he's he's a good little dude.
Dogs are the best. I've got rescue dogs as well. They're
Yeah, it's been an adjustment for him for sure. You know, me going back to work after being home for 6.5 months.
mine didn't like that either.
Yeah, but you can definitely see the before and after, or especially just in the before, how like tattoos really just kind of fall apart. You know, if they don't have an outline. And this person who did this originally, they put a good amount of black in, but just not in really all the right places. Especially with like that, you know, the greens and stuff. But yeah, but the best description I have heard of like tattoos that don't have outlines on them is that eventually it just looks like a puddle of melted crayons. I'm like, oh my god, that is exactly. No matter how crisp and sharp and good it looks in the beginning, it eventually all just kind of fades and melts together, and it doesn't have any strength anymore. Outline your tattoo, kids.
Yeah, exactly. So in terms of mentioned early on being a tattooer as being a pirate, it has definitely changed a lot. Or like you said, people were kind of asking for things off Instagram or Google instead of flash sheets, but maybe it's also allowed people to be able to do a little more research and maybe make better pairings with their artists.
No,
How do you feel about
absolutely. I feel like overall it's mostly been good. Whether I even like certain things or not, you know, I think overall it's been good. And you know, as far as yeah, people can do their own homework because, you know, as difficult as it was for us in terms of finding that imagery and like trying to figure out how to advance our skills and grow. Um, I feel like clients didn't really have any way of knowing where to go. It was like, oh, I went to this person because they did my friend's tattoo, but like they didn't know anything about. I mean, it was really hard to even have like a style because you had to be able to do anything that walked through the door, and just to be able to survive. And so now, yeah, I think it's totally beneficial. Like I said, you can use Instagram to really steer the ship and get to do what you want to do, and it's really easy for clients to identify that, where they can see my page and be like, oh, that's my person, or they can see my page and be like, that is not my person. and that's fine. I'll be the first to say if I'm not someone's person. I think it's good. When I started tattooing, there were a lot of old timers that were grumbling that like too many people were getting into the business and tattooing was going to be over and it was getting too big, and it was like people have been saying that it was on its way out since I started, and it's only gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. And maybe that bubble will burst at some point, but like it hasn't in 25 years that I've been doing it personally. There definitely are waves of things that become popular, or we have a lot of advantages, both clients and tattooers these days, that we didn't have 10 years ago. I try to embrace it. I'm a little bit on like, in between like grumpy old person and someone who tries to embrace the change. I mean, if you totally don't embrace it, you're just going to die. So when I do embrace it and I put effort into it, it only works to my advantage. I'm pretty analog by nature. So
you're still hand drawing.
Yeah. I have an iPad. I downloaded the Procreate app. I bought the pencil, and it doesn't work for me. And I actually during quarantine, I was like, you know what? I'm going to sit down. I'm going to watch some YouTube videos. I'm going to get a handle on this like drawing on the iPad thing. And I just never did because like I don't want to. So I just painted instead, and I'm pretty happy with that decision.
No.
I see all of the ways that it could work to my advantage. And I have peers who are my age, older, been tattooing longer, who have totally embraced it, and like they do really great stuff with it. And I can see how beneficial it could be. It doesn't feel right or good, or I don't know. It doesn't click for me. It's not fun. I feel like I'm answering emails or something. It feels different. It does. And like I said, man, I should put the time in to like, because for drawing tattoos, like I'm sure that I could at least it would be to my advantage up to a certain point, and then I can always do the final drawing or final trace on paper, but I just haven't gotten that far.
Unless you're driven to do that, then
it's true. Yeah. So
paper is affordable enough. You were talking about movies earlier. Are there any favorite movies that you have right now, or?
I definitely have two favorite of all times. Harold and Maude is one of my all-time favorites. Stylistically, it's just great, and it's just a beautiful story, and I sob at the end every time. And this is one amazing scene where he's driving and he like rolls down the window and just like sets his head out the window. It's just like sobbing every time. And my other favorite is Little Shop of Horrors. That has, I think, become my number one favorite because it's the one that my husband and I share, and it's kind of like this really it's kind of like our movie, and that soundtrack is kind of our soundtrack. We both individually loved that movie, and then I feel like our love for that, it's one of those movies that we do a pretty regular rewatch of just because we both love it so much.
That makes me want to rewatch for sure.
It's so good. It's so good. It's so beautiful. Like, again, I love stuff that is handmade, and like the puppetry and the sets and I love 60s girl groups, and I love 60s pop music in general, and like most of my clothing is vintage, and I love that era, even though this is like 80s doing 50s, but and Rick Moranis, fucking great, and Ellen Green, and I can gush over every fucking detail of that movie.
Anybody ever requested a Little Shop of Horrors tattoo?
I've never done one.
That would be really cool.
I'd be really excited. Why don't I have one?
Maybe you should get one.
Good.
That sounds kind of great.
Why don't I? That's ridiculous. I heard rumblings of like pre-pandemic of them remaking it, and that was kind of crushing for me. I'm like, I don't know. Like, please don't. Although, I mean, if they do, I can ignore. I mean, they remade Willy Wonka, and it was terrible, and it kind of just faded away, and it didn't replace the original, and whatever. So, I imagine that might be the same. You can't redo Little Shop. It's just too good.
No.
But or Harold and Maude. You can't redo Harold and Maude. Like,
no.
Leave them alone.
You can try, but well, I think I heard they were gonna redo Beetlejuice, but I don't know if I dreamt that. I mean, that was also another one of those that
the classic. Yeah.
I mean, you could try to remake it, but it's not going to be the same.
Yeah.
And how about music when you're drawing and painting? I've talked to people who have to listen to music, and then other people that want it quiet. So
it's a mix. I would say I probably tend to go with it being quiet. I also listen to a lot of podcasts. And for a while I was listening to audiobooks, but I mostly just do podcasts now. But I also do listen to a lot of music. But the thing is, like, we listen to music all day at the shop. I listen to music just kind of like in my home, a lot of vinyl. And, so we'll often like specifically listen to an album or a handful of songs, stuff like that. But when I'm working, sometimes I just let it be quiet for like hours, and I love it, But I also have a really wide range of music that I love. Like I really love, like I said, 60s pop, 70s punk. That early 70s punk stuff is great. I love the whole 80s new wave genre. So it's a good mix of stuff. I actually really also really love music soundtracks. That's really fun to work to tattoo too as well. It just kind of takes you on this whole journey. Sometimes it's really epic, and sometimes it's really quiet.
You gotta have to write the right tattoo, the epic music.
Yeah, right. Sometimes you need that, you need to feel strong. It's for the client.
Yeah. Well, I would imagine with some of those longer sessions, that amount of focus got to be in the right headspace, which is Is there anything that you collect?
Oh my god, yeah, I'm like a borderline hoarder. Very curated home, I will say that. Art, obviously, like my idea of a good time is going antiquing. My family lives in the middle of Pennsylvania. My mom grew up in central Pennsylvania, went back there after I was out of the house, moved back there. My whole family's there. And like whenever I go back and visit, like that's what we do the whole time. Like we just like map out all the giant antique emporiums, and I send, $200 worth of, just shipping like boxes home like every time. But yeah, mostly it's like mid-century tchotchkes. I gotta say, just whatever hits me. The TV Panthers from the 50s. So I have like, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now it's like, well, sometimes I find one that's a color that I didn't have, or a really unique pose that I didn't have, or something, so there's still exceptions, but I've tried to slow down on some of the things that I have too much. But really, yeah. And I also Carnival chalkware. I've got a good collection of that going on. It's all pretty random though at this point. I mix it up.
So, yeah. So Flash has become kind of a collectible thing.
Oh yeah, for
the
sure.
years. And you sell Flash sheets sometimes, right?
Yeah, but nothing that's collectible. My stuff that I've like made and sold, it's mostly just inkjet prints that I sell for like $20 each, and I'll just keep reprinting them. Like I've never really, I mean, I've done some as far as like not Flash like prints that are actually like fine art prints, and those are limited edition whatever, but I don't know that I'm anyone that like anything's ever even going to become collectible. But I just make what I love, and I'm thankful that people want to buy it. I do actually want to make some really nice, good quality prints of some of the stuff that I painted up over quarantine. It's just now I got to get it scanned, and that's the part that's hard. I'm like, why can't I just paint?
Most painters I found, or a lot of them anyways, are selling prints as well, because it just
Yeah.
offers a different
Well,
price.
yeah. Yeah, and the thing is like you can make prints that, especially because the medium that I work in, I'm not doing like anything that's textured or oils or whatever. It's, so I can make prints that look really identical. Even like that really nice heavy watercolor paper, giclée stuff that looks just as good as an original. But for how long it takes me to paint something, it's just not worth it to sell originals. And again, like I know people who they're just so fast. They paint so beautifully, so quickly, and I just don't. I'm slow and meticulous, and I'm like, I've got 20 hours into this thing. Like, how do I charge for that? Like no one
Right.
wants, to, like, and I wouldn't expect anyone to want to pay me what it's worth. Like, I wouldn't pay what it would, the for the amount of hours it took me to make. So that's why I do just make prints usually, stuff that people can pick up for 20 bucks or 80 bucks or whatever, depending on what it is that is affordable. I think that's why I gravitated toward being a printmaker initially anyway, was that it's not too precious. Like I can make 15 of these things and I can keep one and I can give one to a friend and I can sell them for like working class prices. Like it's not this one precious thing that I put all of this time and love into, and then now I'm parting with it for way less than my time was worth, and or pricing it at a price point that is out of range for your average person. And I feel like art should be accessible to everybody. That anyone likes what I do is like, I feel like a huge honor, and I'm so thankful that I get to be a working artist. I don't know how I would do anything else.
That's huge. So if anybody does want to buy some artwork, what is the best way to reach you?
You can send me a message on Instagram, and I also have my email is linked to that as well. You can hit the little email button. So either way, DM or email on Instagram is probably the best way to get a hold of me. I do expect to make prints soon. I'm going to be getting that stuff scanned, like hopefully the next couple of weeks. And I was hoping to have shit ready to go by the holidays, but I'm just bad at that end of things. Really. Once that part's done, like once I've gotten somebody to scan the stuff, like I'm really good about doing the rest. But it's just like getting it all to the other place.
Right. So. Same thing in starting the show. It was recording the first episode, and I would encourage you to do that, because I mean I think that's the other thing that's interesting. There might be certain images that people love with but are maybe not entirely ready to have on their body permanently.
Sure. Yeah. Like when I go to conventions, one of the things that I do is like little individual 5x7s that are laminated and they have little rivets in the corners. And so like those have always done really well, like when I go to conventions and stuff. But those are intended to be flashed too. So it's fun because you can take it, you can hang it on your wall, but they have the outline on the back. So if somebody did want to have it tattooed at some point, like they can take it to someone and have it tattooed. So
that's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I really, again, I've always loved that kind of like carny element of tattooing. So, and that's actually what the kind of nickname for him is. That it came from Ed, because we have something very similar at the shop that was probably from like the 50s, and he always just called it the Carney Flash. It was like little individual like one shots on each piece of paper that obviously was made so that you could travel with it and set up your booth at the fair or the circus or wherever they were working. So.
And Ed's moved away from tattooing entirely and is mostly inking.
Yeah, he's just been focusing on his fine art for the past decade. So, but he's still around. He spends his time split between San Francisco and Hawaii, and whenever he's in town, like he's really an active part of the shop. Like comes by a lot, and during quarantine, we had a little show and tell of the stuff we were working on, and that's been amazing to have that kind of a person in my life. Like just going and like bringing my work to have Ed look at it and just being like this person, like who am I? Like this is crazy.
Well, I love that. That's really great.
He's always been very generous in really every way imaginable, as far as just being encouraging with whatever we're working on.
Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Shout outs for anybody.
Shout out to Ed and his wife Francesca, man. They've kept the shop afloat through all of this, demanded nothing in return, have been really, really amazing and generous to us through this time. The fact that I still have a place to work, I'm super thankful for. My coworkers for how we've handled everything. And
what year did Tattoo City open?
The
roughly?
location that I am at opened in 99. It was in the same neighborhood down the street starting in 91. And then the original Tattoo City, I believe, I want to say 67 or 68 was when it originally opened. And that one, there was a fire. So, and in between the original one and then the one that opened in 91, Ed had a studio called Realistic that was a custom only place. So yeah, but the location that I'm at has been there since 99.
Very cool. Thanks so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Yeah, this was fun.
Good to see you again. Have a good night.
You too. Bye.